A poor single mother falls in love with a humble street vendor, the candy apple guy, only to discover his shocking secret. He's actually a disguised billionaire. Will his hidden identity destroy their fragile new romance, or can their love survive a lie this huge? Watch until the end to find out if Sophia forgives Mark's betrayal and what happens when the billionaire's real world comes calling. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the chipped cup of coffee, staring out the window of the small, dimly lit diner. The world outside seemed distant and blurred, just a collection of busy people, cars rushing by, and the occasional honking horn. Inside the diner, the clatter of dishes and the murmur of voices created a constant hum. It was just another Monday morning, and Sophia was too tired to care about the noise. She didn't know why she felt so exhausted. Maybe it was the endless cycle of work, parenting, and paying bills that had worn her down. Maybe it was the sleepless nights, trying to balance her dreams with the reality of what she had to do to survive. It had been a while since she felt truly alive. Her life, though filled with love for her daughter Ella, felt like a never-ending grind, a race she couldn't win. Sophia wasn't just tired in the body, she was tired in her soul. The waitress came over with a fresh pot of coffee and a forced smile. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, her voice sweet but practiced. Sophia blinked, caught in her own thoughts. "No thanks, just this for now." The waitress nodded and moved on. She let her eyes wander back to the window, where the world outside continued without her, moving on as if it had no time to wait for the people who were left behind. That's when she saw him. Mark. Standing on the corner by the traffic light, his candy apple cart gleaming in the morning sun. The bright red and white stripes of the cart were a cheerful contrast to the gray streets and the fast-moving crowds. Mark was always there, every morning, every afternoon, selling his candy apples with a smile, offering something sweet in a world that often didn't feel very sweet at all. Sophia had watched him for weeks now. His small stand, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookshop, had become a constant in her daily routine. And it wasn't just the candy apples that drew people to him. It was his quiet charm, his unassuming nature, the way he greeted each customer with the same warm smile, like they were the most important person in the world. Sophia had always passed him by in a rush, head down, focused on her own life. But today, something felt different. Something inside her stirred. She didn't know why, but she felt compelled to get up and walk outside. She needed to see him. Maybe she needed to talk to him. Without fully understanding why, she slipped out of her seat, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the door. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped outside. The cool morning air hit her face. She pulled the collar of her coat higher, her breath visible in the crisp air. There he was, Mark, standing on the corner by the traffic light. His back was turned and he was busy adjusting his stand, but she could see the way his muscles moved beneath the simple t-shirt he wore, the ease in which he worked. It was almost mesmerizing. Something about the way he carried himself, so unpretentious and calm, made Sophia stop in her tracks. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what she was doing, but then her feet moved forward. She crossed the street, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the busy hum of the city around her. As she neared, she noticed the sweet scent of caramelized sugar drifting through the air. It made her stomach rumble. She hadn't eaten much today, just a quick bite between shifts. But that wasn't the reason she was drawn to him. No, there was something else. Mark turned around just as she reached the cart, a smile already forming on his face. "Hey there," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Fancy a candy apple?" Sophia smiled faintly, surprised by the friendliness in his voice. "Sure," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. She wasn't sure why, but she felt vulnerable in that moment, like she'd stepped into a world she didn't fully understand but had been craving.
Mark handed her a candy apple, its bright red surface shimmering in the sunlight. It was almost too perfect to eat, but she took it from him anyway, her fingers brushing against his for a brief moment. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked into his eyes, deep, brown and kind, like they'd seen a lot of life, but hadn't hardened. There was a gentleness about him that made her feel both safe and exposed at the same time. "Thanks," she said, feeling awkward. She wasn't used to these kinds of interactions. She wasn't used to feeling seen, especially not from a stranger. "No problem," he replied, his voice still warm. He didn't rush her, didn't expect anything from her, just let the silence sit between them comfortably. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Mark went about his work, adjusting the cart again, glancing up every now and then to check on her. Sophia took a hesitant bite of the candy apple. The sweet, tart flavor burst in her mouth and she couldn't help but smile. "Delicious," she said, her voice lighter than it had been all day. "You really make these yourself?" Mark chuckled, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yep, every morning. It's a simple job, but it's mine. Keeps me busy." Sophia nodded, chewing thoughtfully. She was beginning to feel a sense of calm in his presence, like she didn't need to rush, didn't need to be anywhere else. She realized she had been so focused on her own struggles that she had forgotten the feeling of just being present. No pressure, no expectations, just this moment. "What made you want to do this?" she asked, surprised herself for the question. She hadn't planned to strike up a conversation, but the words came out before she could stop them. Mark paused, considering her question. "I guess I've always liked simple things," he said slowly. "Life gets complicated sometimes. It's nice to step back and enjoy the little things, like making candy apples." Sophia couldn't help but admire his perspective. How many people in her life had ever been content with something so small? How many people had been willing to step outside of the rat race and just be present? Mark wasn't trying to impress her with his success or his background. He wasn't showing off his wealth or his status. He simply was who he was. And that, more than anything, intrigued her. She didn't know why, but in that moment she felt herself drawn to him even more. There was something almost magical about the simplicity of his life. A part of her, buried deep inside, wanted that, wanted the peace that seemed to radiate from him. He looked at her then, as if sensing her thoughts. His eyes softened. "I don't mind being the candy apple guy," he said quietly. "It's my little corner of the world." Sophia looked at him for a long time, feeling something stirred deep within her. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something, and she couldn't deny it. She could see herself coming back here day after day. "Maybe I'll see you tomorrow," she said, surprising herself again. "I'll be here," Mark replied, his smile a little wider now. "Same time, same place."
The next few days felt like they moved in slow motion for Sophia. She couldn't get Mark out of her head. Every morning, as she sat in the diner, the familiar clatter of plates and cups around her seemed distant. Her mind kept returning to the candy apple vendor, the way he'd smiled at her, the kindness in his voice, the way he simply was. He didn't seem to care about the things she'd grown so consumed with: bills, deadlines, keeping her head above water. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she longed for that kind of peace. Life was always moving so fast for her. She barely had a moment to breathe before another responsibility landed on her lap. But Mark, he seemed to live in a space of calm, unaffected by the chaos of the world. By the third day, she found herself walking out of the diner again, her body almost moving on autopilot. Before she knew it, she was crossing the street toward his stand. She hesitated for only a moment before taking a deep breath and greeting him. "Hey, Mark." His face lit up as soon as he saw her. "Hey there, Sophia. Fancy another one?" He motioned toward the candy apple cart. She smiled, feeling a bit more comfortable now.
Actually, yeah, but I'd like to talk for a bit. If you have time? Mark raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. Of course. I'm always around. What's on your mind? Sophia glanced around at the bustling street, taking in the familiar sounds of the city. The noise felt so distant now, like she was in a completely different world. I don't know, I've been thinking a lot, she said, her voice softer than she'd intended. She didn't want to admit that her thoughts had been consumed by him. She didn't know why she felt this way, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt when he was around. Mark handed her another candy apple, this time with a more thoughtful look on his face. I get it. Life can be overwhelming, right? Sophia took the apple from him, but her eyes were fixed on his, searching for answers she wasn't sure how to ask for. She nodded. Yeah, I guess so. I've just been trying to make it all work, you know? Work, take care of Ella, pay the bills. There's never a moment where I feel like I'm not running. Mark didn't immediately respond. Instead, he seemed to study her, as though weighing his words carefully. I know that feeling, he said finally. But you know, sometimes it helps to slow down, to take a step back and remember what really matters. She laughed lightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, it's easy to say that when you've got it all figured out. Must be nice to be your own boss, to do something that makes you happy. Mark looked almost sad for a moment, his gaze shifting to the candy apples he was preparing. I'm not trying to say it's all perfect, but I do what I love, and that's something a lot of people don't get to say. She noticed the way his voice had softened. It was almost like he was letting her in on a secret, something deep, personal, something about his life that wasn't as perfect as it appeared. And for a brief moment, she wondered if they weren't so different after all. I get it, she said, her voice quieter now. But there's always more to it, right? More to your story than just candy apples. Mark didn't answer right away. He simply gave her a small, knowing smile before handing her a napkin to wipe her fingers. Everyone has their story, Sophia, but not everyone is ready to tell it. Some of us are still figuring out how to live it. Sophia studied him, sensing there was more to him than met the eye. She didn't know why she felt so drawn to him. Was it his sincerity? The way he seemed to understand the heaviness she carried every day? Or maybe it was just the simple act of kindness he gave, the way he made her feel like she wasn't alone in the world. Maybe you'll tell me one day, she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Mark chuckled, but it wasn't the usual light-hearted laugh. This one carried a hint of something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. Maybe, he replied, his voice steady. They stood there for a while, neither of them saying much, but the air between them was different now. It was charged with something unspoken, something that hung in the balance between them. Sophia didn't know why, but she found herself reluctant to leave. She didn't want to walk away from the warmth he seemed to offer, the simplicity he brought into her complicated life. She wanted to know more, to understand him, to understand why he had this effect on her. Before she could overthink it, Mark cleared his throat. I'll be here tomorrow, same time. She nodded, taking another bite of the candy apple. This time it tasted sweeter, richer, as if there was a new layer of meaning to it, to the moment. She gave him a quick smile before turning to leave. But before she took her first step, she paused. Mark, she called. He looked up at her, his expression open. Yeah? Thanks, she said simply. For everything. He smiled, and there was something in his eyes this time that made her heart skip. Anytime, Sophia. Anytime. As she walked back toward the diner, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of longing. She didn't know what it was, but she knew one thing for sure: her life had just taken a turn. She wasn't sure where it was headed, but she had a feeling it had something to do with Mark. The next few days passed by in a blur. Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between her and Mark. Every morning when she walked into the diner, she found herself looking out the window, hoping to see him there. It wasn't just the candy apples anymore. It was something deeper, something unspoken. But it wasn't just her that had changed. The town had started to buzz with new energy, and it wasn't just the seasonal rush of tourists. Mark had become a fixture in her thoughts, his quiet presence infiltrating her day-to-day life, filling the empty spaces she had never noticed before. She found herself taking longer walks around the block during her lunch breaks, just to pass by his cart. Every time she did, Mark was there, serving his candy apples, greeting customers with that same calm demeanor. His smile was constant, yet there was always something behind it, a subtle sadness that she couldn't place. She wondered if he had noticed it too, how the simplest of actions, like giving a smile, could hide so much. One afternoon, when the diner was quieter than usual, Sophia made a decision. She knew what she wanted to do. She needed to talk to him again. Something was calling her to that small corner of the street. She told herself it was curiosity, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. She grabbed her coat, tucked it tightly around her, and stepped outside, the cold wind biting at her cheeks. She crossed the street with a purpose, her heart beating just a little bit faster than usual. When she reached the stand, Mark was there, as expected, making his usual rounds with the candy apples. But today, something was different. He looked distracted. His movements were a little more hurried, his eyes scanning the street as if he were waiting for something, or someone. "Hi, Mark," she called, her voice breaking through the quiet of the street. "Sophia, didn't expect to see you today." "Yeah, I just needed to get out for a bit," she said, her voice trailing off as she took in his expression. There was something about him today that made her feel uneasy. He was trying to hide it, but I could tell something was off. His usual calm demeanor was slightly cracked, just enough for her to notice. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, I'm glad you're here. What can I get you today?" Sophia stood there for a moment, considering the offer. I realized that I wasn't here for the candy apple, at all. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Actually, I wanted to talk. Is everything okay?" Mark's smile faltered just for a moment, before he quickly recovered. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just a busy day. You know." Sophia wasn't convinced. There was a tension in the air that she couldn't ignore. She stepped closer, her voice softening. "You don't have to pretend with me, Mark. If something's bothering you, you can talk about it." Mark looked at her for a brief second, his gaze unreadable. And then, almost imperceptibly, he sighed. "I'm not good at letting people in, Sophia. But I guess I can't hide everything from you, can I?" Sophia blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" Mark paused again, as though wrestling with the words. "I've kept this part of me hidden for a long time. I've been living a lie, in a way. My real life,
It's not as simple as this." He waved his hand around, gesturing to the cart. "I didn't just wake up one day and decide to sell candy apples on the corner. There's more to it." Sophia's heart was racing now, unsure of where this conversation was going. What more? Mark's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something real, raw vulnerability.
I'm not some small-time vendor, Sophia. I'm a billionaire." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and heavy, like a confession. Sophia blinked, trying to process what he had just said. Billionaire. The man standing before her, the man who sold candy apples on the street corner, was a billionaire? "I've spent years trying to escape that life," Mark continued, his voice strained. "I didn't want the fame, the pressure, the expectations, so I came here. I started over. I wanted to see if I could find something real, something that wasn't tied to my money, my name, my reputation. I wanted to know if I could love someone without them caring about all of that." Sophia took a step back, her mind reeling from the sudden shift. The man she'd come to know, the man she'd shared small moments with, had been hiding this enormous truth from her. "But why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice tight. Mark's shoulders sagged and his eyes lowered. "I was afraid you wouldn't look at me the same way. I was afraid you'd see me as just the money, and not the person I am." Sophia swallowed hard, her thoughts swirling. She didn't know what to say. How could she respond to something like this? Could she still trust him after this revelation? "What do you think? Is Mark telling the truth? Could you forgive someone for hiding such a huge secret? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter." Sophia stood frozen in place, her breath catching in her throat. The words hung in the air between them like a heavy fog. Billionaire. The man she'd been confiding in, sharing moments of her day with, the man who made her feel seen, was a billionaire. How would she miss this? How could someone so humble, so kind, be living a life so far beyond her understanding? Mark's eyes avoided hers, his face tense with worry. "I understand if you need to go," he said quietly, almost as if he was already preparing for her to walk away. Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She had so many questions, but the words were stuck. Could she still trust him? Was this all just an act? He wasn't who she thought he was, and yet he hadn't acted like the rich, entitled people she'd seen in her life. He had been nothing but kind, patient, and down to earth. Her mind raced, and her thoughts collided in a whirlwind of confusion. Could he be telling the truth? Could he really have given up everything for a life that felt real, authentic? Was his love for her genuine, or had he been playing some kind of game? She exhaled, trying to find the right words, but nothing felt right. I don't know what to say, Mark," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. "This is a lot to process." Mark nodded slowly, his face tight with frustration. "I get it. I'd never meant for this to happen. I didn't want you to find out like this. I thought if I kept things simple, if I just lived this life, kept myself hidden, I could have something real. I wanted a chance to see if someone would love me for who I am, not for what I have." His voice cracked at the end, and for the first time, Sophia saw just how vulnerable he truly was. The strong, confident man she had seen on the corner every day was just as human as she was. He was scared. Scared of losing her, scared of the truth coming to light, scared of being judged for his wealth and the life he had tried to escape. "Sophia," she started, taking a deep breath, "I don't know if I'm ready to understand all of this. It's just a lot. I don't know if I can process it all at once." Mark nodded slowly, his face tight with frustration. "I get it. I never meant to overwhelm you. But the truth is, I've been overwhelmed by this life I've built. It's not as easy as it looks. It's lonely, Sophia. Very lonely." Sophia glanced at him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes. "But you've got everything. You can have anything you want. Money, freedom, power. So why does it feel like you don't have it all?" Mark gave a quiet laugh, a sound that held both bitterness and a strange sense of relief. "Money doesn't fix loneliness. It doesn't fill the empty spaces inside. I thought I could live like this. Simple, unbothered,
but I've come to realize that I can't keep running from who I am. I've spent so much time hiding I don't even know what's real anymore. And when I met you, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could have something real, something that wasn't about the money, something that was about us." Sophia felt her heart stir, but the weight of his confession was still too much for her to absorb. "I don't know what happens next, Mark, but I think I need some time." "I understand," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Sophia nodded slowly, standing up from the bench. "I'll see you tomorrow, but I need to figure some things out." Mark stood as well, his gaze never leaving her. "I'll be here, Sophia, whenever you're ready." The next morning, Sophia woke up to an unfamiliar sense of heaviness in her chest. The night before had felt like an emotional whirlwind. Mark's confession had turned everything upside down. She had gone to bed with a million questions swirling in her mind, none of which she could answer. How could she look at him the same way after learning he was a billionaire? Was she just a part of his experiment to find something real, or was he truly in love with her? She had always prided herself on being able to see through the facades people put up, but with Mark, she felt lost. He had given her everything she needed: patience, kindness, honesty, but his secret had shattered something in her. She rolled over in bed, her eyes still heavy from lack of sleep, and glanced at the clock. It was already late. Ella would be up soon. Sophia quickly got dressed, though every movement felt mechanical. The weight of what happened the day before lingered over her like a thick fog. She had agreed to meet Mark today, but she wasn't sure what she was walking into. Was she ready to face him again? As she prepared breakfast for Ella, the sound of her daughter's footsteps echoed through the house, and a sense of normalcy returned. Sophia tried to push the thoughts of Mark from her mind, but they kept creeping back in. She set the table, trying to focus on the simplicity of the morning, but her mind kept drifting back to his confession. "You're quiet today," Ella remarked, sitting down at the table with her plate of scrambled eggs. She looked up at her mother with wide eyes, always attuned to her moods.
Sophia gave a small smile. "Just tired, sweetie, but I'm fine." "Are you going to see the Candy Apple Man again today?" Ella asked, as if it was the most natural question in the world. Sophia nearly choked on her coffee. She hadn't realized how much Ella had noticed, but then again, it wasn't exactly a secret. Every day, Sophia would tell her daughter about Mark and how nice he was, how he made the best candy apples she'd ever tasted. It seemed like such a small, innocent thing at the time, but now it felt like a 1,000-pound weight hanging over them. "I don't know," Sophia said, her voice softer than she'd intended. "I need to figure some things out." Ella looked at her mother curiously, her brow furrowed in concern. "Is something wrong, Mom?" Sophia hesitated, unsure of how to explain. She didn't want to burden Ella with adult problems, but the truth was, she was struggling. She was confused, uncertain, and afraid of what was going to happen next. But how could she possibly explain this to her daughter, who saw the world through the innocent lens of a child? "Everything's okay, sweetheart. I'm just figuring things out." Ella nodded, not pressing further, and Sophia couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. How many times had she promised herself that she would make things better for them, that she would find a way out of this endless cycle of struggling to survive? And now, with Mark's revelation, things had become more complicated than ever. After breakfast, Sophia kissed Ella on the forehead and sent her off to school. She felt a small sense of relief as she watched her daughter walk out the door, the weight of responsibility momentarily lifted. But it was only temporary. The questions still lingered, the uncertainty still clawed at her. She needed to see Mark again, to figure out where they stood, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face him yet. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside, the cool air biting at her skin as she walked down the street
toward his candy apple stand. She could feel her heart beating in her chest, quickening with every step. She didn't know what she expected, but she knew she couldn't avoid this any longer. As she neared the stand, she saw Mark in the distance. He was standing beside the cart, his hands clasped in front of him, looking more tense than she had ever seen him. When he saw her approaching, he didn't smile like he usually did. Instead, his expression softened with what looked like both relief and worry. "Hi," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I didn't expect you today." Sophia stopped a few feet away from him, unsure of how to start. "I needed to come," she said softly. "I've been thinking a lot." "I'm sorry," Mark said, his voice tinged with regret. "I never meant for it to be this way. I never wanted to hurt you." Sophia shook her head. "You didn't hurt me, Mark. I don't know. I don't know what to feel right now. I didn't expect this. I don't even know how to process it." Mark stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I get it. You don't have to make any decisions right now. I want you to know that everything I said was true. I never lied to you about who I am, about what I want. I've been living in the shadows of my own life for so long, but with you, I thought maybe I could stop hiding." Sophia felt her heart ache at the honesty in his voice. She had seen his kindness, his generosity, but there had always been something holding him back. He had never allowed anyone to truly see him. And now, with everything out in the open, he was offering her the real him, the man behind the candy apple cart, the man with the wealth and the empire, but also the man with the same fears and insecurities. "I just need some time," she said steadily. "I need to figure out if I can accept this, if I can accept you for who you really are." Mark nodded, his face somber. "Take all the time you need, Sophia. I'll be here, no matter what. I've never wanted anything more than the chance to show you that this is real." Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision pressing on her chest. Could she accept this new version of Mark? Could she accept that the man she had fallen for wasn't just a humble candy apple vendor, but a billionaire hiding in plain sight? She didn't know the answer. Not yet. But one thing was clear. Her life was about to change. She didn't know how or in what way, but she knew that Mark's revelation had shaken her to the core, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had to make a choice. Sophia walked away from Mark's candy apple cart that day, feeling more uncertain than she had ever felt in her life. Each step felt like it was carrying her farther from the life she knew, yet closer to a life she couldn't quite grasp. She kept replaying his words over and over in her mind, his confession that he was a billionaire. It sounded so unreal. She asked for time to process, time to think, but it felt like time was the one thing she didn't have. Her life was already a juggling act between taking care of Ella, paying the bills, and scraping by day after day. She couldn't afford to get lost in something that seemed like it could become a distraction, especially something as complicated as Mark. But still, she couldn't stop thinking about him. He was different. He made her feel things she hadn't felt in years, things she had long buried beneath the weight of responsibility. She didn't go back to the diner the next morning. Instead, she stayed home, trying to force herself to focus on something that would stop the endless churn of thoughts in her mind. Ella was at school, and for the first time in a long while, she found herself with an empty house. She sat at the kitchen table, the quietness pressing down on her. The truth hung in the air, suffocating her. Mark wasn't just some guy from the street corner. He wasn't the man she thought he was. But wasn't that what made their connection real?
He hadn't used his wealth to impress her, hadn't expected anything from her. He'd wanted her to see him, the real him. The question was, could she accept the truth about him? Could she accept the truth about herself? As she sat there, her phone buzzed on the table, dragging her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, seeing a message from Mark. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't responded to his last message, hadn't even acknowledged it, but now there was a sense of urgency in her chest, a pull she couldn't ignore. Mark, I know this is a lot, but I can't stop thinking about you. I just want to be honest with you, Sophia. Please let me know when you're ready to talk. She stared at the message for a long time, her thumb hovering over the screen. Part of her wanted to text him back, tell him she was ready to listen, ready to give him another chance. But another part of her, the part that was still wounded, still trying to figure out who she could trust, told her to step away. But she couldn't. She replied, Sophia, I don't know what to say, Mark. I need to understand what this means, what it means for me, for us. Can we meet again? Her fingers trembled, and as she hit send, she felt exposed, like she had just thrown herself into the unknown without any sense of what would happen next. She stood up and paced the room, feeling a sense of anticipation mixed with fear. She didn't even realize how much she had been holding on to until she saw his response flash on the screen. Mark, I'll be waiting. Same place, same time. I'll be there. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision pressing on her chest. She had made her choice. She was going to face it. Face him. A few hours later, she found herself standing at the corner of the street again, looking at the familiar candy apple cart. It almost felt like a dream. The red and white stripes, the sugary smell in the air. It was all familiar, and yet nothing felt the same anymore. Mark was waiting for her when she arrived, his expression unreadable. He stood there, leaning against his cart, his hands tucked into his jacket. He looked as if he had been waiting for a long time, as if every minute was a second of his life slipping away. Sophia took a deep breath as she approached him. She had come for answers, but now that she was here, she wasn't sure what she was looking for. Would he give her the answer she needed? Or was this just going to be another part of the mystery she had to solve on her own? Hi, she said, her voice quieter than she had intended. Hi, Mark replied, his voice softer than usual. He stepped forward, a little hesitantly, as if unsure of how to approach her. I've gone taking about everything, she said, finally breaking the silence. You told me the truth, Mark, but I'm still trying to understand.
Mark's gaze softened, and he took a step closer to her. I didn't want to hide from you. I didn't want to keep this secret anymore. But I had to, Sophia. You deserve more than just me as a man with a candy apple cart. You deserve the real me, the part of me that's been hiding for so long. Sophia swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. There was so much she wanted to say, so many things she still didn't understand, but the one thing she did know was that she had never met anyone like him, not even close. But how can I trust you, Mark? How can I trust that what you're offering is real? You've spent your whole life hiding. What if I'm just another part of your escape? What if you've just been hiding from me, too? Mark looked down, his face creased with regret. I know it's hard. I don't expect you to trust me just like that. But I promise you, I'm not running from you. I never was. I've been running from myself, from this life I created that I didn't want. But with you, I don't want to run anymore. I want to be here. I want you. I want this. Sophia's heart beat faster in her chest, a swell of emotions rising within her. She wasn't sure if she was ready to jump in,
but she knew she couldn't walk away without giving this a chance. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to trust you." Mark stepped forward, his expression full of relief, and he gently took her hand in his. The warmth of his touch made her breath catch. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause, leaving just the two of them standing there, with everything unsaid hanging in the air between them. "I'll do everything I can to prove to you that I'm worth your trust," he said quietly. "I'll prove that I'm not just the man you thought I was. I'll show you the man I want to be for you." Sophia squeezed his hand, her mind still swirling with everything that had just been revealed, but for the first time she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. The days that followed were a mixture of clarity and confusion for Sophia. She had given herself a chance to trust Mark, but each step she took toward him felt heavier than the last. Every conversation with him, every shared moment, felt like it was slowly chiseling away at the walls she had spent so long building around herself. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe in the love he was offering, but fear still lingered in the back of her mind. Fear that the life he had created, the persona he had chosen to live, was just another mask, a disguise for a man who was hiding his true self. Every time she saw him, standing by the candy apple cart, she was reminded of the man he had shown her, the humble, kind-hearted vendor who gave her his time, his patience, and his honesty. But now, with the weight of his confession resting on her shoulders, she wondered if that man was just an act. What if he was still hiding the true extent of who he was? What if his wealth was a shield that he had used to protect himself from the world? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of a decision that would change everything. One morning, just days after their last conversation, Sophia found herself walking toward the corner where Mark set up his stand. The streets were quieter than usual, the city still waking up to the day. She hadn't planned on coming by today, but something inside her urged her to go, to face him again, to see where this was headed. When she arrived, she saw him immediately. He was adjusting the cart, his back turned, wearing his usual faded jacket and baseball cap. He looked as if he were lost in thought, focused on his work. But when he turned and saw her, his face lit up. "Sophia," he greeted her softly, his voice carrying a warmth that she had come to recognize. "I didn't plan to," she said, her voice steady, despite the emotions swirling inside her. "But I needed to. I need to know if this is real, if what we have is real." Mark's expression softened, his eyes searching hers. "I'm not asking you to take a leap of faith, Sophia. I'm asking you to take the time you need. I don't expect anything from you. I just want to be here for you, however long it takes." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had wanted answers, and now in his quiet sincerity, she found something more. She didn't have all the answers, and maybe she never would, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't keep running from this. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "I don't know if I can just forget everything that's happened. You're a billionaire, Mark. That's a huge part of who you are, whether you want it to be or not. And I don't know how I can be part of that life." Mark stepped closer, his gaze never leaving her. "I understand your fears. I'm not asking you to be part of my world just because I have money. I'm asking you to see me for who I am, not what I have. The money doesn't change the way I feel about you. It doesn't change the way I've come to care for you. If anything, it just makes me realize how much I've been hiding from myself. You've spent so much of your life hiding. You've kept this secret from everyone, even from me. How do I know that this is real? That I'm not just another part of your experiment to find something genuine?" Mark's expression softened, and he reached out, gently taking her hand. "I don't expect you to trust me completely. I don't expect everything to be easy, but I want to try. I want to build something real with you, not because of what I have, but because of who we are when we're together. I don't want to hide anymore, Sophia, not from you, not from myself." The sincerity in his voice cut through her doubts like a knife. She had spent so much time focused on the idea of who he was and what he represented, but she had never stopped to consider what they could be together. She had been so caught up in her own fears, her own uncertainties, that she hadn't allowed herself to truly see him, not just as the candy apple vendor, not just as the billionaire, but as Mark, the man who had shared his life with her, who cared for her daughter, who made her laugh. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "but I want to try to. I want to see if we can make something real out of this." Mark's eyes shone with something unspoken. Hope, relief, gratitude. "Then we'll take it one step at a time," he said, his voice filled with determination. "No rush, no pressure, just us." For the first time in days, Sophia felt something shift inside her. The uncertainty, the fear, the hesitation, it didn't vanish, but it was replaced by something else, a small spark of hope. Hope that they could build something together, something real, something that wasn't based on money, status, or expectations. "Thank you," she whispered, her words almost lost in the quiet morning air. Mark squeezed her hand, his smile soft and reassuring. "You don't have to thank me. We're in this together, remember?" Sophia nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle in her chest. She didn't have all the answers. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew she couldn't keep running from this. Whatever it was, whatever it could become, she was ready to face it. And so, with the sun rising above them and the streets of the city slowly coming to life, Sophia and Mark stood there, side by side, taking their first step into the unknown. The days following their conversation felt like a slow but steady unraveling of the tension that had built up between them. Sophia and Mark spent more time together, each moment serving as a quiet confirmation of the decision they'd both made. They hadn't defined anything, hadn't made any promises, but each passing day felt like a step forward. Sophia found herself growing more comfortable in his presence, and with each shared conversation, each laugh, the walls she had built around her heart started to crumble. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in, when she caught herself wondering if she was being naive or if Mark's true intentions were still hidden beneath layers of carefully constructed charm. It was easy to forget the truth about him when they were together. In those moments, he was just Mark, the man who shared his life with her, who cared for her daughter, who made her laugh. But when the night came, when the quiet fell over her apartment, she couldn't escape the reality of his wealth, his empire, and the life he had left behind. She still hadn't fully processed what it meant for her, for Ella, to be part of his world. Was it a fairy tale? A dream come true? Or was it something more complicated? Something she wasn't sure she was ready for? One evening, as they sat in his car on the way to a small local cafe, the silence between them felt heavier than it ever had. Mark had been quiet
for most of the drive, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. "You've been quiet," Sophia said, her voice breaking the tension. "What's going on?" Mark glanced at her quickly before looking back at the road. "I've been thinking about what comes next," he admitted. About how we go forward from here. I know I've asked a lot of you already." Sophia felt her heart race. "Mark." "No, Let me finish, he said, his voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity. I know this isn't easy, and I know I've asked you to accept things about me that you never expected. You deserve the truth, and you deserve to make your own choices. I don't want to force you into anything, Sophia. I don't want to pressure you to be something you're not ready for. His words were both reassuring and painful. He wasn't pushing her. He was giving her space. But the more he gave her, the more she realized how much she wanted to be a part of his world, not just as his girlfriend, but as someone who could stand beside him, share in his victories and his losses. The cafe came into view, and Mark parked the car, his hand still gripping the wheel, his shoulders tense. We don't have to do this, he said, finally meeting her eyes. We can go home, we can take our time. I just want to be sure you're making a choice that's right for you. Sophia took a deep breath, and without thinking, reached out and touched his arm. I'm not sure I've ever made the right choices, she admitted, her voice soft. But I know one thing. I'm not running from this. From you. Not anymore. Mark's eyes softened, and the tension in his shoulders seemed to melt away. He turned his hand, palm up, and gently grasped hers. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her. You don't have to have all the answers now, he said quietly. We don't have to know everything today. I'm just glad you're here, that you're willing to try. Sophia nodded gently, squeezing his hand. I don't know where this is going, Mark, but I'm willing to take the next step. Mark smiled, a genuine, relieved smile that made her heart skip a beat. That's all I need, Sophia. Just the next step. They sat there for a moment, the sounds of the city just beginning to filter into the car. The cafe looked warm and inviting from the outside, but for the first time in days, Sophia wasn't sure if it was the place she needed to be. She wasn't afraid of being with Mark, but she was afraid of losing herself in this world that had suddenly been thrust upon her. What would it mean for Ella? Would their lives be different? Better? Or was this just a fleeting moment of happiness that would ultimately fade, like so many others in her life? Mark turned off the engine, and Sophia realized that she had been holding her breath, waiting for something, anything, to make sense. He reached for the door, but before he could open it, she stopped him.
Mark, she said, her voice soft but firm, I need to tell you something. He paused, looking at her with concern. What is it? Sophia hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment. She had to say it, or it would always remain unspoken. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I'm scared of losing myself. I'm scared of getting lost in you, in your world. I've spent my whole life trying to survive, trying to be strong for Ella. And now you've come into my life and everything is different. And I'm not sure I can handle it. Mark's expression softened, and he gently reached over, taking her hand again. Sophia, you're not losing yourself. You're not losing who you are. I see you, the real you, the woman who's been through so much and still stands strong. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to be with me, to share your life with me as it is. No expectations, just us. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, the weight of his words sinking into her. She wasn't sure where this would go, where their relationship would take them, but for the first time in a long time, she felt the possibility of a future. A future with him, yes, but more importantly, a future with herself. Okay, she whispered. Let's take that next step, together. Mark's smile spread across his face like sunlight breaking through the clouds. I promise you won't regret it. The days that followed felt different. Not because everything had suddenly fallen into place, but because for the first time in a long time, Sophia was allowing herself to take a breath. She wasn't rushing through the motions of life. She wasn't holding herself back. Mark had kept his promise. He didn't rush her, didn't pressure her. He gave her space, allowing their relationship to grow at its own pace. Every time they saw each other, it felt like they were slowly peeling away layers, revealing more of who they were, who they could be together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Sophia had expected to feel overwhelmed by his world, to feel like she was drowning in the opulence, the wealth, and the expectations that came with it. But she didn't. She wasn't swept away by his money or his status. Instead, she was drawn to him, the man who had shown her tenderness, patience, and honesty. It wasn't about the life he had created. It was about the man who had chosen to share it with her. They spent weekends together, exploring the city, going to quiet cafes and taking long walks. Sometimes they would sit in silence, not needing words. Other times they would talk for hours, sharing their dreams, their fears, their pasts. It was in these moments that Sophia realized that she had never truly understood what it meant to be vulnerable with someone. She had spent so many years protecting herself, closing off parts of her heart to avoid the hurt. But with Mark, she felt like she could finally let go of the weight she had carried for so long. Ella had taken to Mark in her own quiet way. She was still young, still figuring out the world around her, but she had accepted him without question. Mark had always treated her with the same kindness and respect he had shown Sophia. He didn't try to be her father, he didn't need to, but he was there for her, a constant presence in their lives, and that was all she needed. It wasn't long before Sophia realized that she had come to a decision. It wasn't a big, dramatic moment. It wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a quiet understanding that had slowly taken root in her heart. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future would look like, but she knew one thing. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't afraid to take this chance, to step into the unknown with Mark, because for the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was living. One evening, after a quiet dinner together, Mark took her hand and led her outside. The city was alive with the hum of life around them, but there was a stillness between them, a comfortable, quiet kind of silence. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked, her voice light. Mark smiled, his eyes glinting with a mischievous spark. "Just trust me." He led her to a small park at the edge of the city, a place they had visited once before. The bench they had sat on the first time they'd talked was still there, as if waiting for them. They sat down together, and Mark reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small box. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "What's this?" Mark looked at her, his expression soft. "I don't want to rush things, Sophia. I don't want to make promises that I can't keep, but I want you to know that I'm here, that I'm all in, that I'm not going anywhere." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. Not flashy, not extravagant, just a symbol of something real. Sophia's heart caught in her throat as she stared at it. "Mark, I don't want to," he continued, his voice steady. "I just want to be with you, to take the next step, whatever that is, to see where this goes, together." Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes, and she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to cry in front of him. But she couldn't help it. She had been so afraid for so long, afraid to trust, afraid to love, afraid to let someone in. But here, with Mark, she felt something different, something that made all the pain, all the fears feel small in comparison.
I don't know what the future holds, she said softly, her voice trembling. But I know that I want you in it. I want us to be in it together. Mark smiled, his eyes filled with relief and love. He gently slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt a peace settle over her. This wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about choosing each other despite the uncertainties. They sat there together in the park, the city lights flickering around them, and for the first time, it didn't matter what the world thought or what had come before. What mattered was what was in front of them, the future they would create, one step at a time. End.
What a journey, right? From secrets to revelations, from doubt to trust. Sophia and Mark have come a long way. If you've enjoyed their story, make sure to like this video and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Will their relationship survive the test of time? Let us know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. The end.